Hi, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Tim Perilla. I am the Chief Legal Officer at LinkSquares, and today I've got John Bartman from Jameson Legal. John, why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Hi, Tim. Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is John Bartman. I've had a history of working with law firms, starting off in sales and marketing, and understanding how law firms win new business, and then understanding how the legal process works from there on in. Worked with some of the best and brightest firms based here in the UK, where I am in London, and realized about 2 years ago that legal tech was very much the way forward, and there were so many interesting innovations that were upsetting the apple cart and really making life easier for both private practice and in-house legal teams. So with the help of the CEO of Jameson Legal, we started a company called Jameson Legal Tech about 18 months ago. And the idea there is that we are helping in-house teams and private practice lawyers finding the right tech stack and introducing interesting, innovative solutions. So that's us, really. That's who we are.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And that brings us into our presentation today. John and I are going to be talking a bit about the ultimate tech stack for the in-house legal teams. A little bit about LinkSquares before we really dig into the deck here. LinkSquares is an AI-powered CLM platform, and we focus on making sure that the contracting process is as streamlined and as simplified as possible for users, with an aim at providing the lawyers doing the work with the ability to quickly and easily understand what work needs to be done. The business folks who are requesting the work provides them the visibility to understand when they make a request of the legal function what exactly the status is at each step of the way. And for the people managing the attorneys who are doing the work, it provides quantitative data associated with the work being done by those attorneys. So I think from there we can just get into it. Does it sound good, John?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Remember, everybody, I should say that there is a chat function that you should be able to see on the right-hand side on my screen, might be on the left on yours. Please feel free to ask questions at any stage. We'll try and deal with them as they come up or at the end, but please feel free to ask questions at any stage.
Excellent. Thanks, John. So contracts affect every department. As I'm sure many of you in the audience have recognized, contracting is one of the most visible things that the legal function performs for the organization. I tell people a lot of times that you can knock it out of the park dealing with litigation and managing some of your privacy issues and even M&A activity and things like that. But if you're missing on the contracts front, everybody notices. Everybody notices, and it's really challenging for your organization as a legal function to be viewed as successful if you're not doing what you need to do from the contract side. So when you think about a lot of the different departments here, you see obviously you've got HR, finance, compliance, marketing, procurement, sales, and even within each of those you have a handful of different stakeholders who may be utilizing the legal function for their contracts in different ways. John, happy to have you hop in on any part of this as well.
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting that this particular slide. I think where it becomes interesting is exactly as you said there, Tim, which is judging of the legal team. And of course, all of us legal professionals who are here today are judged in the same way that sales is judged on the amount of sales that they make, or that marketing on the amount of buzz and the amount of people that turn up to that webinar or whatever. Actually, the legal team have a different way of dealing with how they're judged, and somewhat unfairly, it's judged on how many different tasks did I do, and as a busy in-house team, understanding that there may be pushes and pulls from literally everybody on that screen, whether it be HR, compliance, or procurement, who are saying, I want to do this and you've got to do that and I've got to do that. You're judged every day. But the big thing that you're judged on is the contracts, and that is everything that you're doing. So, I throw it back to you, Tim. Keep, how often that you as an in-house legal guru would deal with being judged and making sure that you have everything lined up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely an interesting dynamic. And so prior to joining LinkSquares as the general counsel at DraftKings, and by the time that I left DraftKings, there were fewer than a third of the attorneys that were on my team actually had anything to do with contracts. And so it's funny because it really and DraftKings maybe is a little bit unique because of some of the regulated industry stuff that goes along with being in the sports gambling space. But it is interesting because every quarterly business review that we did, and every time people are asking about performance reviews for different individuals across the team, but specifically me, like, the contract review process was something that was really focused on by really the entire executive team. And thinking about it here at LinkSquares, that's actually a much more major part of what the legal function does. Every single one of our customers has to execute an agreement with us. It's a little bit different than the click to register sort of B2C type environment. And so we have a high volume of more or less standardized contracts, but of course people will make edits, red lines, etc. And that being able to walk into those quarterly business reviews with some quantitative aspect is really important. In the absence of that, what you have is more or less anecdotal feedback, right? Like what I would do, prior to LinkSquares, prior to having, as DraftKings became a LinkSquares customer, but prior to that, I would go and ask the people who I knew were the main consumers of the legal service, right? The marketing department, the business development team, folks in the product, on the product side, anyone who's doing any of the mass media, the advertising, etc., and say, how do you feel about the legal services that you've been given by the team? And it was interesting because those pieces of feedback were always colored by the most recent interaction with the team, right? Or the most recent pieces of feedback that leader had gotten from that leader's team. And so, but by and large, like, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Everyone seems to be pretty happy. And then, like, you go to the next person who's like, head of engineering. They're like, we released X number of lines of code and 5 different features of this, that, and da 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 da, right? Super quantitative. So you kind of feel like you're just not speaking the same language without that. And so, having the right tech stack in is really important, I think, particularly for in-house. I mean, John, I know you spent some time at law firms. Maybe I've never been, thankfully, I've never been at a law firm. I've never worked for a law firm. So I'd be interested in hearing sort of how you think about some of the differences there.
Yeah, that's a sort of really interesting point, because law firms have a completely, sort of different structure in the way that they do work, but essentially we're dealing with the same issues, which is to be more effective, and that's what we've got to be as the legal profession, is to be more effective. What we're finding with law firms is that a lot of the processes go back to, it's the way it's always been done. That's the way that we do things. We've always done it that way, and we're always going to do it this way. And that becomes, that idea becomes very difficult for change, because people are used to doing things in a certain way. They want to have their work done in a certain way. They want to receive it in a certain way, and they want to use tech in a certain way as well. I think that the other thing is that in the last 5 or 6 years, or 5 to 10 years, there's been quite a lot of legal tech that's come about that's been expensive, that's been difficult to implement, hasn't done what it said it was going to do, and has made private practice lawyers kind of scared of the whole thing. Now, obviously in larger companies, things are slightly different because we embrace tech on a, you know, as a company, whether you're a FTSE or, you know, a large Forbes 500 company, you will embrace technology in a different way to a law firm has. And I think that a lot of the law firms have made expensive mistakes, which has then led to an adoption of tech not really coming through in the same way. So, you know, I feel the success and, you know, being a part of an in-house team is truly exciting because you should be able to make changes a lot quicker than the structure of a law firm. And so I totally understand, Tim, why you've never been in private practice, because it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, chasing that build hour is not something that that seems too appealing to me. But you know, but it's interesting because, you know, John, that's a good segue, because what we're seeing here is that we have the same problems, right? We're hearing this sort of universally, and what that should tell us as attorneys, whether we're in-house or whether we're at law firms, is that we're not adapting to the way that businesses operate in the same way that maybe other functions are. You know, we're, you know, legal being disorganized and legal not providing insight as to what the status is of work that's going on, or even the work that's being done, right? So there's sort of two aspects of insight here. There's the aspect of whether the business person requesting that particular legal service understands what's happening with their request, whether it's even been looked at in many cases. And then there's insight sort of at the macro level, like, hey, you know, Tim, you've got a team of, you know, 3 lawyers, 4 lawyers, 10 lawyers, and now you want 2 more. We don't even know what you do, like, by and large. Like, we kind of know what's going on. Like, you tell us about a couple major projects here and there, but I don't understand why that justifies, you know, another hire or a team of a certain size. And, you know, so there's those two aspects of insight that to be successful in-house, you really need to figure out a way to crack the code there and be able to provide that insight. And what that also leads to is, you know, we're not optimized. It sort of makes you look inefficient. And I think part of like appearing inefficient is not immediately having, you know, having the ability to provide that insight and those that level of visibility to the stakeholders and to, you know, the rest of the management team. And so,
Tim, I'm going to ask you a question at this stage because I'm intrigued. Obviously, not worked in an in-house legal team, but how often were you batted back, or, you know, told when you said I need a new attorney? How often were you told that your justification is wrong? I mean, is it a constant battle, or could they understand the process?
in some circumstances, usually when you're truly drowning and falling apart, like, people will recognize that, and so you'll get a resource or two, but you need to make sure that when you get that resource, you utilize it effectively. If you get a resource and then you're still drowning, at some point people start to say, maybe it's Tim's leadership, right? Maybe Tim's not running the department the right way, and that may be true, and absolutely, certainly at some level, you know, I could definitely be a more efficient, better leader, and so on and so forth. But again, without having quantitative data, like, it would be very easy, like, now, you know, being able to show like, all right, this is how many contracts the team has taken in, how many contract requests we've had. This is how many turns of the documents we've had. So for any given contract, you may have 15 or 20 turns depending on the complexity of it, right? And so being able to actually show the increase in that over time, and being able to show the turnaround times, and how those turnaround times change with either an increase or decrease in workload, it's pretty simple to say, like, look, we're starting to have increased turnaround times as the volume's going up. If we add another attorney, we're gonna bring those turnaround times back down, and kind of have this wave that you try to normalize. But without having quantitative data, you really almost have to get to the point where either you've built really strong trust in the leadership, right, within the leadership group, and say, all right, I think that I trust you, that you're being responsible with the resources, or you have to be able to figure out a way to provide enough of that insight, or or maybe you're dealing with a controversy, right? Like maybe there's something that happens where you're going along nicely, and you have your legal department, and then all of a sudden you have some massive external event, like maybe it's maybe it's the passage of some new legislation that significantly increases your compliance overhead or something like that. Maybe it's litigation. I know I think a large number of our attendees here are not based in the US. So maybe the litigation stuff doesn't hit quite as hard as it will for some of us US based attorneys.
Oh, no. We love a bit of litigation over this side of the pond, and throughout Europe. So I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, having these same problems appear consistently over time, it really should tell us something, right? It should tell us, it should tell us that the business is actually expecting more, right? And as the business expects more from us, we have to change the way that we're working with the business, and we have to use technology to adapt to the way that the business communicates with other functions, right? Right. You get to a point where you're kind of not speaking the same language, I think.
Yeah, look, and I think just to add to that bit, I think what I was saying before is that actually technology has been seen across so many other functions across many large businesses. So, where we were talking before about private practice, not adopting technology well, actually in the real world and, of big business, adopting technology is seen as something that's second nature. And it seems to be that the legal department sometimes hangs a little bit further behind. What I found, though, is that that's because they haven't had products in front of them that actually return on the investment that they spend. So there are lots of vanity type products of, yeah, we're going to take a ticketing system and we're going to get this system that means that you can add in your request to the legal team, and then it's going to come up here. Loads of those systems came along about 5 or 6 years ago, and actually they were expensive. They didn't kind of do what they were meant to do. And again, that idea of being a cost center rather than a business enabler came around again with legal teams. And I think that obviously with LinkSquares, you have something that genuinely deals with everything that's in front of us here, and then actually has a return on the investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about each of these things, like there's and sorry, every time I kind of click, going from viewing presentation mode versus being able to see the camera, it moves the thing. So sorry about that. But every time when you're in-house and thinking about technology and evaluating technology, I think a lot of the solutions out there have been built with a particular way to solve a problem in mind, right? And in my mind, most of if not all of the products out there have really missed the mark as to what the pain point is for the legal function, right? Like I'm pretty good at reviewing contracts. If I see a contract, I can read it, I can review it, and I can edit it, and that's not really the problem. The problem is when I have 75 contracts coming in and they're all distributed over email and over Slack and over, over whatever other form of communication you have. Maybe, maybe you're a part of one of those companies there where your in-house development team built you like a little web form where people can upload things. They click send request to the legal department, and then they hope and pray that they get a response because there's no visibility associated with it after that. But a lot of it is, again, really focusing on solving those three problems that we highlighted just in the earlier slide here. And so, as we look to, we're disorganized, what does that really mean, right? Because I don't necessarily think that it's leaders of legal teams saying that we're disorganized, right?
No.
I mean, it's usually, and John, tell me your perspective on this. It's usually the business is saying, you appear to be disorganized.
Yeah, completely. And that's one of the most damaging phrases that you can have as a leader of any team, whether it be the marketing team or the HR or sales or whatever, to be called disorganized. It's like you're not very good at your job, and we all know that that isn't the case. And it's very disheartening. It's not good for the business. And I do completely agree. The disorganization point will never come from you and your team mostly. It will come from other parts of the businesses that are putting that pressure and that stress and strain on everything that you're doing. And look, it's understandable because when you're sat as that sales guy, or you're sat as the head of HR, or that's got to get an employment contract done, you do think that you're the only person that's putting this forward. I mean, you have an understanding that the department's really busy, but my work is always the most important work. And that's a really difficult thing that you don't often get in other parts of the business. So, when we were putting together this webinar, we sat with marketing, for example, and we had a meeting 3 weeks ago, and then we had a meeting 4 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, and there was always a time. However, legal work doesn't necessarily have that kind of time sensitive nature in terms of, well, we've got a few weeks to work that one out, we'll do it that way. It's like, I need an answer, and I need an answer now or tomorrow. It's okay if it comes tomorrow. And that leads to people saying, well, you're just disorganized because I gave you that 2 days ago. And it's like, well, there were 400 other things that came in 2 days ago as well.
That's exactly it. And while people may understand, okay, you're busy, you've got a lot going on, what I've found is that it's usually the things that, like, when the business acknowledges that the legal team is really busy, it's usually because there are things going on that at the macro level that actually are the things that you can manage timelines a little bit better on. Like if you are dealing with a wave of litigation, or if you're dealing with potential regulatory enforcement actions or anything like that, you can manage those timelines, and as an attorney, you're expected to manage those timelines so that it's not chaos, so that you don't make stupid mistakes because you're in a crunch for time, right? Where a lot of this like busy sort of like I don't want to call it panic, but appearance of panic comes from is because the request from the business doesn't have that same level of organization. The requests coming from the business we don't have that luxury of being able to say, hey, we need X number of days to turn this around, right? Business moves at the speed of business, and oftentimes lawyers can't keep up with that. And it really is because of this aspect of like, I'm a strong believer that there's intake process and workflow, like what's currently out there right now just kind of like tries to document it. It doesn't really try to help it, right? And what rarely will any of these tools do, but it's something that we focus on a lot at LinkSquares, is all right, we build products specifically for in-house legal departments. Like I say this all the time to people when they ask me like why has LinkSquares been as successful as it is, and it's because we are really the only company out there that's a legal tech company built by business people seeking to solve a business problem. You look at every other one of our competitors, and by and large, like their most senior leadership, if not the CEO, then at least one, if not more members of the executive teams and the founding teams are attorneys with law firm experience who said, I'm going to solve this like it's a legal problem. It's not a legal problem. This is 100% a business problem. And that's where like intake and managing requests and understanding that you have to provide visibility, understanding that the leadership of the legal function has other outward reporting capabilities is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, we've had a couple of questions through, and
Yeah.
I'm keen to see some of our recommendations in terms of the tech stack. I think this leads sort of nicely on to sort of where LinkSquares fits into all of these issues that we've been talking about, and how it's. But look, for me, and whilst you're kind of getting everything prepared, obviously we deal with in-house teams on a daily basis, and that's anywhere in the world, from UK, Europe, through Africa, through into the Middle East and the whole of the GCC, into Asia, and then into Australia. And the one thing that we see with all in-house teams, what the cornerstone tech stack recommendation would be, is having a way to manage your contracts. We love the product that LinkSquares have created for the side of that. Now, I feel, and again, I'm going to lead you into this, but once you have your cornerstone, and your cornerstone being a great contract management tool, everything else can feed off of that. And that's where it becomes kind of interesting. But it's the one thing that I've been impressed with, and again, this comes back to what I was talking about at the beginning, is how easy this is to implement and how easy it is to start. You know, it doesn't take 6 months or a year or whatever. Actually, implementation is pretty easy. But leading on to sort of why LinkSquares almost, or why contract lifecycle management as the cornerstone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to skip ahead a little bit here, and I, you know, before I get to some of the future slides, so time to value is a critical aspect here, and as you said, you can get onboarded with LinkSquares. LinkSquares provides sort of both sides of the contract lifecycle management process. Right? It has the post-signature analytics side and pre-signature contract workflow side. And so when you're able to actually implement a CLM system that takes sort of that highest level of visibility, like we were talking about earlier, if you don't get contracts right, no matter what else you get right, your legal department's not going to look like it's actually doing its job. And so that's why CLM is really a hot button issue right now. It's something that's at the forefront of business. So you want something that's a quick time to value, and you think about it from a pre-signature perspective. And you know, the LinkSquares product solves exactly the problems that we were talking about. So for the attorneys who actually need to do the work, they can log in and see immediately this is the work that needs to be done. For the attorneys who are, or for the business people who are requesting the work, they can either, particularly like if you're looking at, if you're a Salesforce shop, your team uses Salesforce, we have native integrations in Salesforce. And so like you can just look in Salesforce and you can see, hey, Tim took a look at my contract and he's reviewing it right now. Oh, Tim turned it around and there's the contract, and now I can send it off to my people. Or Tim has a couple of questions for me, those types of things. So, and the time to value for that is basically immediate. We also provide for self-service NDAs, and if you have form agreements and things like that, you can use a pretty easy wizard that will take some questions from the person who wants to create the contract and spit a contract out to them. And you can have a handful of different templates that work in that way. And then when you look at what the primary focus is of the pre-signature tool is really to get the lawyers out of email, right? And so then it eliminates problems with version control. It eliminates problems with, hey, maybe I missed an email talking about some of the different nuances that the business people are going back and forth on. And so, you know, you have this centralized communication portal. So when the attorneys will log in, they'll actually see, okay, this is what's happening with the DraftKings contract, for example. We have, you know, several different terms, and oh, DraftKings just responded with another term. The software will automatically recognize that there's another term in the contract and put it as the most recent contract, and the language of the email, all the email content will be right there with you, so that you can quickly see, you know, if you're dealing with 10 other things, and all of a sudden you get, you know, that term from DraftKings, and you say, I haven't thought about this in 2 weeks. It's right there for you. When you think about the post-signature side, really understanding what's in your contracts is absolutely critical to your success as an attorney. You think about things like, oh, what are the provisions in the event that I have a data breach, right? What notice provisions do I have? If you want to look at how many of my contracts have change of control provision, maybe you're going into some M&A activity, and you're doing some like quality of revenue analysis. Be able to say like, hey, 60% of our contracts have a termination, give a termination right in favor of the other person in the event of a change of control. Right, like that's pretty important stuff to know, like right out of the gate. And so having a tool that obviously LinkSquares, we pull over 100 different values out of the box, right? Using AI, you upload your contracts, we pull out 100 values, and you can slice and dice that data however you want. You run reports and say, show me every single contract that has an intellectual property license, that has a termination provision for change of control, and has a restriction on assignment. Boom, pulls it up, right? Thousands of contracts, pulls it up into a spreadsheet that you can download, and you can see the actual provisions. You can read through it. And you think about a world without LinkSquares, you're talking about sending all of those thousands of contracts to an outside law firm to have some associate, you know, sit there and read them until 2 in the morning, billing you, you know, $300-400 an hour to do it. You know, it gets really, really expensive very quickly. And so, you know, John, I'm happy to go through. I know we talked about providing that insight here and providing KPIs.
Yeah, I think it's really important when we're talking about that, because there's your return on investment, what we were talking about before. But also, I'm really keen that where we've had our biggest successes has been where an in-house team starts with something that is probably the most important part. So where sometimes the tech stack's gone wrong is that they'll introduce 2 or 3 other things. You know, it may be team management, as we said before. It may be some other kind of business analysis type tool that they've tried to introduce, and it kind of goes a bit wrong, and then everyone sees that as a cost center, and suddenly it becomes. Whereas having the cornerstone of your tech stack being your CLM, your solution, I think that everyone in the business is going to start to really understand the pushes and pulls and how important this kind of solution is. So sorry, yeah, go ahead, Tim. I think this is a really good slide, this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the when you implement the CLM, because it is so impactful to the rest of the business, the status of the legal department is immediately elevated, right? And it makes the leadership of the legal function start to think about, okay, how can I use technology, and what is really the problem that was solved by the CLM, right? Was it helping me to do legal work faster? Unlikely that was the problem that everyone said, oh my gosh, you're faster at, you know, doing your legal analysis. Wow, and that's really changed my life as a salesperson, right? It's unlikely that's the case, right? Usually it's, okay, you now appear to be organized. You now can tell me what's going on with my requests, right? And so we look at Zywave here. Zywave is a LinkSquares customer. They're an insurance company, insurance tech company, cloud-based, right? Headquartered in Milwaukee, about 900 employees, over 8 offices, international as well. They did a lot of M&A work. They were acquiring a lot of different companies, and so anybody who's been a part of M&A work understands that, you know, there's a ton of contract review associated with it. So the way that Zywave utilized LinkSquares was they bought our Analyze product, and they were able to get up and running just with sort of the Zywave contracts, right? Get them up into the system, pull out the information that that comes out of the box, right? The 100 plus values. I forget exactly. I think they may have started with like 30 or 40 of the smart values, and ended up ultimately increasing up to all of them after seeing sort of the way that information allowed them to think through and analyze the contract portfolio on a macro scale. So they were able to take all of these smart values, and actually through our Salesforce integration with every contract, they were able to put that into Salesforce. So when you're looking at a Salesforce instance, you're not only able to see sort of the business metrics around the contract, you can now see some of the key indicators from a legal perspective as well. And so they were doing a lot of that manually, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, takes a lot of time. And when I talk about like doing that manually, they're like, oh, like here's like the 10 things that we pulled out of this contract. Let's like actually type these into Salesforce or do a copy paste in Salesforce. Really like super inefficient way to do this. And you think about the way that Zywave was running is, you know, they when they would acquire a new company, all of those you know customers with that new company would also need to be put into Salesforce. And so, you know, 7 M&A events going on, that's a ton of contracts that needed to be ingested, and the information contained in those contracts needed to be socialized across their entire business. And so utilizing our Salesforce integration, they were able to do that. So basically, from an Analyze perspective, Analyze is our post-signature solution. Analyze allows for a bulk upload, and so you upload, you know, all of your due diligence contracts, for example, and then the contracts are converted into, you know, machine readable text and run through our AI algorithm, and then, you know, turn around and these smart values are extracted from them, and from there you can run reports. You can dig into any one particular contract. You can do full text searching and things like that to try to figure out maybe there's something, you know, specific to your industry. For example, at DraftKings is you know, that we had a lot of restrictions on the ways that we could use, for example, like the logos of our sports league partners, right? Like, could we use that, you know, Major League Baseball logo in connection with a paid call to action, right? A call to action for a paid sports bet or a paid fantasy contest or something like that, right? And so some of the full text search helps to find some of that stuff that's pretty custom. And then we also have like user generated tags, right? And so some of the stuff that Zywave would put together is like, okay, something very specific to either this particular acquisition, like maybe I don't know much about insurance, like maybe this particular set of contracts has some nuance associated with subrogation, right? And so they're able to create a custom like a user generated tag where they can go into those contracts and say, hey, this has that weird thing related to subrogation provision, and have that sort of customizable level of information right at their fingertips for searching later on. And so, you know, when you look at what the results ultimately were here is, you know, Zywave started with our post-signature, loved it so much they came on to the pre-signature, and now they're using it for contract drafting as well. You know, they were using a spreadsheet for they were using a spreadsheet for more or less, these are the types of clauses that we want to use in this situation or that situation. And, you know, it ended up getting clunky and it's hard to maintain, et cetera, as with any in-house legal department that's tried to use Excel to manage your contracts. You probably find yourself not updating it or being as diligent on keeping that current as you should be. But you know, obviously, with our pre-signature platform, we have a clause library that actually helps you curate that content, and all of this sort of results in, you know, from a contract analytics perspective, it accelerates your due diligence. Salesforce, you know, that's specific, obviously, to Xywave and any other Salesforce shop. I know there are a bunch of them, but there are also a bunch of people who are not in Salesforce. But I mean, having that automated, that native integration is super helpful, and it goes along with this, like, work where you want to work, where the legal function is not forcing the sales team to turn around and come and learn some new software, right? You're in Salesforce, you love Salesforce, we want you to work in Salesforce, and you can work with us in Salesforce, right? And then, you know, decreasing risk around, you know, a non-standard language, you know, that's finalized bread and butter, right? Being able to look across your contracts and being able to look across your portfolio in real time to say, like, all right, where am I varying from, you know, from my standardized clauses? You know, having that right at your fingertips is hugely valuable. So I know I kind of went on a little bit there. John, happy to have you.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's super interesting. I know there was a question there, and I think Tim's answered it actually about how you get those contracts from whatever form they're in. And of course, this is again part of what's happened throughout a lot of legal tech. So this isn't just about LinkSquares, for example. This is a lot of other legal tech solutions have become very good at implementing, and it's suddenly become a little bit easier to take information from one place and put it in another place, whatever that may be. But certainly in terms of your contracts, whether they are, you know, in PDF form, in hard copy, in any type of solution, then they're able to get into your repository. And the OCR capability means that it can read. And one thing that we found with our clients and LinkSquares especially is that the OCR is exceptionally well trained. So it will actually, it's kind of, I heard it being discussed only yesterday as like a spell check on like 1,000 miles an hour, because it will actually look at the letters, it will work out the words and then go backwards. So the OCR capability before the AI kicks in of exactly that. One thing I wanted to add at this stage, and I know we're coming towards the end, but I think we started at this at the beginning, which was that most kind of tech solutions were always for the really large companies or for the really large legal teams within those companies. And the way that things have gone, and certainly what we're dealing with at Jameson Legal Tech, is a lot of our clients are not huge teams. They may only be 1 or 2 or 3 people who are still taking on an enormous task with hundreds of employees speaking to them on a daily basis, and they're running a difficult task. It doesn't matter the size of your team. It doesn't matter that you don't need to have 1,000 contracts or 2,000 contracts. Actually, we're working with companies that have 150 very complex documents or 100 documents, contracts that are going through. It doesn't matter that you've got nothing at the moment. You've just got a shared drive that you're just putting everything on. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. Everything is about what's going to happen from tomorrow. And I know that sounds kind of prophetic in itself. However, because implementation has been made that much easier, and because you can take something from here to there very quickly, it means that implementation is quick and easy. And one thing, you know, again, I don't want to big up LinkSquares too much, but we found that implementation team has been super. And the way that they take our clients it's a process and they understand it, and that's what makes tech solutions work really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from our perspective, it's been something that we've really been focused on since the beginning, is making sure that what our AI is pulling out is accurate. And that starts at the OCR level. Like there are a ton of people out there who maybe one party signs using DocuSign or Adobe Sign or whatever sign tool you want to use, and then they email it over and someone prints it out and signs it, right? Scans it back in, and that's it. And so we've developed proprietary technology that allows us to go through those sort of scanned PDFs and actually pull out that text. And what we'll do is we'll do a quality assurance check on it to be sure that we have a level of confidence that the OCR output accurately reflects what was actually in the agreement, because it's kind of a garbage in, garbage out thing a lot of times with AI. And so, if your OCR isn't working well, then your AI isn't going to work well either. And you look at a lot of our competitors, and they're either still trying to figure this out, or they're just telling potential customers, sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with it. Like we're gonna be able to do this with your digital PDFs. And I mean, obviously, like PDF, like it's super easy. You can Adobe Acrobat just says convert to Word or convert to text, right? Like it's super easy to do. And it's already fixed, but the challenging thing is taking those scanned documents, getting them in. So and then obviously integrating with that shared drive, whether it's a Dropbox or a Google Drive, or just a network drive, right? Network drive, which a lot of companies use. Bulk ingesting of documents is what we do, right? And we get you set up, and our average implementation is about 30 to 45 days, which is pretty remarkable. You look at a lot of the folks out there, and that includes all of your scanned PDFs. And if you have hard copies around and you're taking pictures of them with your phone and uploading them and sending them via email, all of that stuff. That's really what we look at. We actually find that the challenge to time to value on the analyze side is rarely on our side. It's usually people running around trying to find wherever their contracts are within their organization. So I mean, that's absolutely a critical part of sort of the value prop of LinkSquares. You look at some of the others too, like a lot of organizations talk about AI, and we have AI, but in many cases these are managed services where like they need to use your documents to train their AI. Our AI is fully trained out of the box. Like we've seen hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of NDAs, right? Different, like we've seen confidentiality provisions written millions of different ways, right? Assignment provisions millions of different ways, to the extent that there are millions of ways to draft an assignment provision. But ours are fully trained, and a lot of these folks who would require training on your contracts, what that should tell you is that they're probably just more of a managed service, right? They're just like a group of people who are probably like digging through your contracts and then tagging them and turning them around and telling you that it's AI. Right.
I love that. I love the pretending of that it's AI, but actually it's someone that's turning it around. And that's something that I think has started to come out into the marketplace a bit, which is that people have to be more transparent in the way. And again, this has probably been how the solution was solved for the last 5 or 6 years, but the technology has moved on. And that's where it becomes super interesting for in-house teams, but also super terrible for those backward technologies who are still trying to sort of sell on the success of 5 years ago without realizing what's happened. So yeah, it's fun times at the moment.
We joke around a little bit internally. We say we have, when we say we have AI, we have artificial intelligence, and a lot of others have actual individuals. So
Very good. I like that. I didn't even know that process. By the way, I literally didn't know that existed until a year ago. That people would say that they've got artificial intelligence, but actually it's an individual that has to look through it and then tag it themselves. It was like alien to me, because you're like, you said it was AI, and yeah, but the AI doesn't pick up on it. It's what you need to sort of find out, which is actually you don't really have any AI. You've just got a person who's there sifting through and then tagging as they should.
yeah,
Tim, you're aware of the time that
yes,
we've got like a couple of minutes.
yep. We've got just a couple of minutes left here. You know, obviously, thank you everybody for joining us. Really, really great to have you all here, and you know, would love to see if there are any questions from the attendees.
I think we've been kind of answering them as we're going along, actually. Look, there was a question before about the tech stack and what else. So I'll very quickly answer on our side. Obviously, I see thousands of products since we started, and probably have had demos of 300 legal tech solutions. On the in-house team, I can't recommend anything else past starting with your CLM at the beginning. From there, then there's probably a team management role that you may want to look at. And there are a number of products that we work with that I'm more than happy to speak about on a next time we speak, or if you want to reach out to me at Jameson Legal Tech, feel free. And that's about sort of client management, but the client being internal stakeholders and making sure people are talking to each other in the same way that Teams does, but not in a great way. But start with the CLM. It's going to make your lives much easier. And we found that in every in-house team that we're speaking to throughout the world, they don't really understand. And we're here to help with that education piece as well, to just explain exactly how it's going to work, how easy it is to implement, what the costs are going to be, because it's got to provide a return on investment. It's not there to look good, it's there to do a job. And if the job is good, then it's going to be well adopted by everybody. So at this stage, I think that we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yeah, looks like it. And
we could have talked about him. I could have carried on.
This could go on for hours. We'll spare the attendees that. Maybe you and I jump back on. We'll do it direct.
Exactly. Lovely guy. Well, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you for organizing this. The marketing team at LinkSquares, I think it was great. So thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
John, thanks so much for all your helpful insight and really being a great partner. It's been awesome so far, the relationship, and really looking forward to seeing how things continue to grow and develop soon. And let me know when you get into New York, and we'll see. Love to be able to see you in person here soon.
Yeah, in New York from Sunday. So I'll send you an email. If anyone else is around, let me know. Speak to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.